Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out our other videos.
There's a quote from John Ford's cinematic classic, The Man Who Shot Liberty's Valance, that contains one of the most fundamental truths about mainstream media. Not something you would expect from a Western starring John Wayne. When the legend becomes fact, print the legend. Perception is more important than reality, at least when trying to sell a story. And while that theory might lend itself to works of fiction, when applied to journalism or even pop culture, it does readers a great disservice. 1995's Waterworld is a film where the legend has replaced fact. The stench of its supposed failure is now legendary. Based on the perception, countless websites have referred to Waterworld as one of cinema's greatest failures, a flop often thrown on lists discussing Hollywood's most spectacular shipwrecks. But was Waterworld really a flop? Let's take a look at the facts. Waterworld made $264 million worldwide in 1995, the 12th biggest movie worldwide that year. When adjusted for inflation, would make its total take $450 million in 2019. We're using 2019 since that was the last year of box office reporting, not impacted by the COVID pandemic. In 2019, Waterworld would have been the 18th biggest movie of the year, just ahead of Detective Pikachu. At the time, Waterworld was the most expensive movie ever made, an obscenely high $175 million budget, which translates to nearly $300 million today. A number which means the film would have had to have been a massive cultural phenomenon if it had a prayer of recovering the budget during the theatrical run. With the kind of money Universal poured into Waterworld, the film had to achieve the kind of box office success that was reserved for pop culture phenomena like Jurassic Park or The Lion King. Waterworld was a financial disappointment for Universal, but the word flop is unfairly hoisted onto the film like an albatross. The film was the #1 movie in America for the first 2 weeks of release. Audiences were intrigued enough to buy tickets. Audiences were generally ambivalent. Most critics called it average, praising the film's looks and production design, engrossed by the style but unimpressed by the substance. The film's budget was its biggest encumbrance. Entertainment media latched onto the huge budget, which created huge expectations. But the story isn't as interesting if it was just a mere disappointment. No one is interested in marginal failures, and so the myth of Waterworld was a flop was born and continued to be repeated for decades. To understand why Waterworld isn't a flop, let's look at films that accurately meet that definition. Kevin Costner's The Postman. The Postman was Kevin Costner's follow-up to the Oscar-winning Dances with Wolves. It told the story of a post-apocalyptic future where saving the spirit of America rested on the shoulders of a mailman and his bag of undelivered parcels. It was a bloated 3-hour epic that cost $86 million and made a grand total of $17 million worldwide. A flop that was actually a flop. Not a disappointment or a misfire, but a movie that failed to engage audiences and fizzled without so much as a single moment in the bright sunlight of cultural zeitgeist. The Postman was released on Christmas Day, 1997, a week after another massive blockbuster which had been widely scrutinized for its massive budget and ocean setting, Titanic. The Postman is a definition of a flop. But the story isn't as sexy. Its budget was large, but not obscene. Costner wasn't radiating the same star power in 1997, due in no small part to the shellacking he took from Waterworld's failure. In 1995, Costner was still one of the biggest leading men in the world with massive hits like Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and The Bodyguard, elevating him into rarefield A-list air. Waterworld had mortally wounded Kevin Costner's career. His stature as a leading man was already waning, thanks in no small part to another very long epic, that definitely qualified as a flop. Lawrence Kasdan's What's Up. I doubt there are many who could categorize Waterworld as a success, both creatively or financially, but calling it a flop is disingenuous and a product of journalists leaning on the legacy rather than the facts.